Verse 8, a strange verse indeed. The wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but canst not tell whence it cometh and whither it goeth. So is every one that is born of the Spirit. Now keep in mind that the word rendered here is wind. In Hebrew, the word is ruach, and in Greek, which this would have been from, is the word pneuma. And they both mean wind, breath, or spirit. It's as if the Lord is saying, the Spirit goes where it will. You sense it. You can even hear the sound. By the way, the word sound could be rendered voice. You hear the voice, but you can't tell where it came from and where it's going. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. Now, this is profound, I think. I think it's important for Latter-day Saints, and frankly for all Christians, to know we cannot program the Holy Ghost. I remember sitting in a class once where the teacher began with this: welcome, brothers and sisters, to class. Today, we're going to have a magnificent, powerful spiritual experience. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if the Holy Ghost is saying, oh yeah? Well, we'll see.
Watch out. Yeah.
We can't program, we can't produce, we can't manufacture a spiritual experience. We can't use emotion to produce a spiritual experience. It doesn't happen that way. It works in the reverse. You may have a spiritual experience which brings with it deep emotion. Goes where it will. You can't program it. We can set the stage. If I'm a teacher, I can make the classroom a place that seems to be a reverent place. I might have beautiful, inspiring music playing in the background, and so forth. But we can't say, if I do this, the Holy Ghost will do this, this, and this. No, He will not. We don't have that kind of power. Now, there's another way of talking about this verse, and that is, it's one thing to have the Spirit of the Lord, and it's another thing to feel it. People can have the Spirit and not necessarily be overwhelmed spiritually. And I think this is crucial. Let me give you two illustrations. One of my favorites is the illustration with Mother Teresa. Here's this wonderful woman. She becomes a nun at 18, and before too very many years, she proposes to the Vatican that there be a special order of the Catholic Church set up just for those who would do things a little different, who won't wait for people to come to them. They will go out into the streets and bless the lives of people out there. Missionaries of Charity was the name of the order. She did that for 50 years there in Calcutta, India. Anybody almost in America that ever read a book or read the newspaper or listened to the news would have heard of Mother Teresa. Everybody knew her as the embodiment of a charitable person. But there was something about her they didn't know. And we didn't find out about it until a year after she'd passed away. One of the men who had been one of her confessors, that is, the person to whom she would go, perhaps a bishop or a cardinal, to confess, one of her confessors compiled the letters that she had written to the Vatican and pulled together journal diary entries, all of which said things like this: I just can't feel God's approval. I feel like I'm in the dark. I can't feel close to God. I know He loves me, but I can't feel it. And it goes on and on and on, and you say, my goodness, how can a woman who is so involved in spiritual things not be overwhelmed with the Spirit? And my answer is, I don't know. But what did she do? Did she stop because she wasn't feeling the Spirit or the feeling of love of God like she thought she should feel? No. She kept right on. And if you want to talk about faith, that's faith. You act because you know it's the right thing to do. The second illustration, of course, when I had my heart attack in 2001, I was serving as the stake president. It was a terribly bad time to have a heart attack. So I didn't schedule it. It came.
It didn't ask. It didn't say, hey, you got time for a heart attack?
Would now
today?
be a good time. Yeah.
It didn't say Thursday would be a nice day for us. What do you think? It just hit. Here's one of the things. Not only did the world seem dark to me for several months, I'd never been depressed in my life. I'd had my bad days, but I'd never had this experience. I could not feel the Spirit the same way. I was prone to interpret that as I don't have the Spirit. But weirdly enough, I carried on as a stake president as best I could. I spoke in stake meetings. I spoke at stake conferences. I continued as a teacher at BYU teaching, not feeling what I had once felt. But having students or members of my stake come up and say, I've never been so moved. This was wonderful. Thank you. The Spirit was so strong. I meet people who are depressed often. And one of the characteristics of some people is that they don't feel the Spirit in the same way. That doesn't mean they don't have it. It just means that for now they're not feeling it the way they wish they could feel it. And so I think we can't always rely upon, do I have overwhelming feelings of spirituality? We can't wait for that before we can sense that we have the Holy Ghost. I think this verse is saying the Holy Ghost can come and go. It's not something we can say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to have the Spirit, and I'm going to do that and the Spirit's going to produce a marvelous experience. Jesus could do that, but you and I can't.
We can get stuck sometimes in thinking, well, I want to be a good ministering brother and sister, but I want to do it for the right reasons. So I'm just going to wait until I feel the perfect motivation for it. And if we did that, nothing would ever happen. So we can stagnate that way. So the test that Mother Teresa had, having to persist in what she knew was right on whatever levels, even when she didn't have the confirming of the Spirit, I think that's a test the Lord gives us sometimes. What will they do when things don't make sense? What will they do when they're not feeling it? Will they continue in God, to use a Section 50 phrase?
I mean, I search my soul again and again. What sins are you guilty of? What have you done that's wrong or bad? And I honestly couldn't come up with anything. And it wasn't until later that I began to reflect on it. And as I was reading John 3 one day, I thought, I don't have complete control over the Spirit. And sometimes circumstances in life, in this case, a physical condition, whether it be depression or a horrible physical ailment, can keep us from feeling like we wish we would feel spiritually. But it doesn't mean we don't have the Spirit, because we very well might and probably do.
I think that will bless a lot of people, just hearing that sort of thing, that sometimes we move forward kind of not knowing beforehand as Nephi, or not feeling that accompaniment. And maybe even sometime we'll look back and say, I was being guided back then. I didn't know it at the time, but...
Well, it's the person that says, the way I feel right now, I shouldn't even go to church. No, it's better to go to church.
Yeah, it's better.
And you come home from church and you say, yeah, that was good. Or, I don't feel like ministering today. So what? You do it.
Yeah.
And you have a good experience, and you come home and you say, that was the right thing to do. Like you're saying, we can't wait for some prompting to get us to do things. Yeah, I just think there's some things we have no control over except putting ourselves in a position to enjoy the Spirit. I think that's all I want to say about that. Anything else we ought to say on that? Wind blows where it will.
I like that. You can't go out there and try to control the wind. Challenge anybody. Go out there and tell the wind what to do.